Hello and welcome back to your Pennsylvania Dutch Minute viewer request video, and it's a grammar video. I was really excited to read an email from a gentleman asking if I could do a video on when you use to plus a verb in a sentence, and I thought, oh my god, it's a great topic. I haven't done a video on this. So this is a little bit more advanced grammar, but that shouldn't scare you. We actually use these constructions quite a lot in both English and in Pennsylvania Dutch. So just because you might think your grammar skills aren't all that great or you're not that advanced in the language yet, you might be surprised that this isn't a difficult topic to master, but it's one nonetheless that you need to know. So without any further ado, let's chomp our teeth into what we call to plus infinitive phrases or clauses. So let's review a little bit real quick. When I say the word infinitive, if you don't remember, the infinitive is the basic form of the verb, meaning when it isn't conjugated. If you would go to a dictionary and look up the verb to sing, it would give you singe with an e on the end. That's the unconjugated form. When would it? What do you mean conjugated? Well, I'm hoping that most of you remember that when I would use that in a sentence, we conjugate it by dropping that e off and then adding the right ending. For example, you sing or you are singing. Du singst. We put that scht ending on. But in the infinitive, and that's what we're working with today, it stays in its unconjugated form. I've given 3 verbs there to show you. We have singe, to sing, esse, to eat, and koche, to cook. They all end in an E. I guess I shouldn't say every verb in Pennsylvania Dutch in the infinitive ends in E, but I'm going to make that statement. Every verb in Pennsylvania Dutch that you will ever encounter ends in E in the infinitive. So when we say infinitive, that's what we mean. Non-conjugated verbs. Now, we have seen sentences and we've done videos on sentences where there's more than one verb in a sentence. We really encounter this the most when we've talked about modals and future tense, and I have videos, separate videos on both of those topics. And remember that a modal auxiliary or the future tense is where we essentially have 2 verbs in one sentence. When we look at these 2 examples I have here, I have one that's a modal sentence and one that's a future tense sentence. And I've put in red, the verb and the modal or the future tense. So, ich muss heimgehen. I must go home. And ich werde es Buch kaufen. I will buy the book. Both of these have sentences where the verb is at the end. Why? Because we learned in those other videos that when you have a modal or a future tense, the verb gets pushed to the end. And I just noticed that there is a verb that doesn't end in an E in the infinitive, and that's gay. There it is. I wasn't even thinking. I typed this up and that totally slipped my mind. But anyway, these verbs at the end, gay and kaufe, are not conjugated. Why? Because the other word in the sentence, muss or wär, are the conjugated quote unquote verbs for these sentences. So we've done sentences before where we've had more than one verb in a sentence, most notably with modals and future tense. But what happens if we want to say something that doesn't have a modal or a future tense and has 2 verbs in it? And you probably think, well, we never do that. But actually, we do it a lot in both English and Pennsylvania Dutch. And that's where we need to figure out, or we need to know how to use the whole topic of this video, which is to plus an infinitive. This construction, to plus infinitive, is used in a sentence with 2 verbs when one is not modal or future tense. We just looked at sentences with a modal or future tense. Well, now let's look at sentences that do not have a modal or future tense, but there's still 2 verbs. And I've given the English and then underneath the Pennsylvania Dutch. Here's one example. In English, there is a lot to do. That sentence has 2 verbs, is and do. Now, we call these to plus infinitive grammatically. Well, we can think of it this way. When we look at this sentence, here's what we do in English. They're called a to plus infinitive. And is a verb and do is a verb, but since we have both, is conjugated, do is not conjugated, and in English we will use the word to, to, plus an infinitive. There is a lot to do. Well, luckily for us, learning Pennsylvania Dutch almost follows that exact same word order structure. We have our conjugated verb right after the subject, and then the to plus the infinitive goes to the end of the sentence. If we take that exact same sentence, there is a lot to do in Pennsylvania Dutch. Es gibt viel zu do. Do, here's another verb that doesn't end in an E. Ay, 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 Douglas. So gay and do, there's examples, are infinitives that go to the end of the sentence. They're not conjugated. The gept is what is conjugated. Es gibt viel zu do. That's just one example. We're going to look at a lot more examples. The one rule you have to remember is that when you're using a to plus infinitive, that construction, the to plus infinitive, goes to the end of the sentence, and that final verb, whatever the infinitive verb is, does not conjugate. You can't conjugate it. You've already conjugated the first verb in the sentence, so you don't conjugate the last verb, okay? Just like when we did modal sentences, we conjugated the modal, but whatever the other verb was at the end didn't get conjugated. Same way with future tense. The vera gets conjugated, and then the verb goes to the end unconjugated. You have to think of doing that same thing in your mind when working with these types of sentences. So let's look at a couple more examples. I'll do the English first and then the Pennsylvania Dutch. I don't know what to say. And again, I've put in red the verb and the to clause in English, to know and to say. I don't know what to say. Follow the rules. Conjugate the first verb. Ich weiß nicht, was zu sagen. Ich weiß nicht, was zu sagen. The weiß is the verb that gets conjugated, comes from wisse, to know, and the zu plus infinitive goes to the end, zu sagen, to say, and sagen is not conjugated, okay? Another example, that is hard to do. Cell is hot zu do. Conjugate is, that's your conjugated verb. The to plus infinitive, which in this case to do, goes to the end. Cell is hot zu do. Do doesn't get conjugated. Here's another example. He is trying to bake a cake. In English, we have the verb to try and to bake. There's our two verbs. When we do that in Pennsylvania Dutch, follow the rules. A probiert en Kuchen zu backen. Probieren, to try, is the verb that gets conjugated. Your to bake, zu backen, goes to the end. No conjugation. A probiert en Kuchen zu backen. He is trying to bake a cake. Here's one more. We have the phrase in English, it surprises me to see him here. Surprise and to see are our verbs. So we follow the rules. Es wundert mich, ihn do zu sehen. Es wundert mich, ihn do zu sehen. It surprises me to see him here. Wundere, the verb to surprise or to wonder, and then the phrase to see goes to the end. Es wundert mich do ihn do zu sehen. There's just one other thing to think about. In English, we don't really have separable prefix verbs. We've done and talked about separable prefix verbs. There's a video on that in the series. Check it out. But if we're dealing with a separable prefix verb, which we know there's quite a lot of separable prefix verbs in Pennsylvania Dutch, when we do that, and that separable prefix verb is the verb at the end of the sentence, the to still gets used, but notice it goes between the prefix and the stem. So it kind of like slips up in the middle there. An example of that, we take the sentence, it is important to invite him. Is and invite are our two verbs. To invite in Pennsylvania Dutch is einladen. And if you remember, einladen, separable prefix verb, if we're using that in a regular sentence, the I and the laden separate and they flip, and the I goes to the end. But here, since this is a to plus infinitive, our first verb is conjugated there, and the to goes in between the prefix and the stem, which in this case I and laden, so the to goes in between. I zu laden, all is one word. And we get then a final sentence, es ist wichtig, ihn einzuladen. Es ist wichtig, ihn einzuladen. That's a little tricky to get your head wrapped around at first, but eventually that'll make sense, or it'll click, I guess. And the zu, anytime you're dealing with a separable prefix verb, that su has to go in between. All right, that is a very brief overview of using to plus infinitives. I think it's pretty. It should come pretty natural to English speakers because we have the same construction in English. To plus a verb. It is hard to do, and think about how often in English we use that kind of construction. So Pennsylvania Dutch does it too. It's not that much of a. There's not that much of a difference between how Pennsylvania Dutch does it as compared to English. Practice these, and eventually I think it'll just click like everything else when learning a language. Eventually, just the light bulb goes off, and oh, I get it now. But that only comes through practice. So thanks for the great question. It was a topic that I wasn't even on my radar, and then I was like, oh yeah, of course, that is an important topic. I don't know how to do that. If you have an idea for a future video, or there's a grammar topic or something about the language that you're out there learning and you just don't understand, or you want to say something and you're like, I don't know how to say this. Well, email me, and as you can see, I always answer all emails, and if it's a topic that I think is apropos, I definitely turn it into a video. So if you have an idea, my email, of course, is at the end of the video. Feel free to send me a message. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Visit the website, padutch101.com, for tons of helpful links to things. There you can read my blog, which is out. I try to put out a post once every couple of weeks, all in Pennsylvania Dutch. So for those of you that want to expand your horizons and start reading some Pennsylvania Dutch, it's there. I have links to other places you can visit online where you can read and access Pennsylvania Dutch. And I'll keep the videos coming as long as you guys want me to. But until next time, keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch. Your homework, create at least 5 sentences using our topic today, to plus the infinitive. And if you're trying, if you're working on this stuff by yourself and you live somewhere where you're nowhere near Pennsylvania Dutch speakers, like you're in the middle of South Carolina and you're working on this, or Texas, and you don't have anybody to check your work, email me your sentences and I will gladly tell you, oh, you got it, or oh, watch this. As a teacher, that's what I do. So don't feel like you would be infringing upon me or my personal space. If you're somewhere and you have no access to someone that speaks Pennsylvania Dutch and you're doing this, distance learning type thing, email me. I'll check your homework for you. I'll let you know if you're doing it right, or if you're not doing it right, and I'll help you out and we'll have a little conversation. I've talked long enough today. I hope you all have a great week. Keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch, and Mox good.
That's good.